you very much. Everybody is very tired. I'm going to speak in English. The discussion here has shown a lot of things that we now have covered by many questions. So some parts of this presentation will not apply anymore, which is good for you. In particular, this first part, which I intended to talk about the change that has taken place in innovation policies. Because here we are talking about innovation policies as if the whole time it was the same thing. In fact, since let's say 10, 15 years in Europe mainly, and in the United States, there has been a real change in the way innovation is focused by research policies. Innovation has always been a sort of combination of different policies in industry, in commerce, in research, and this is part of the difficulty for the governments to focus on what is innovation. So it has always been understood as a limited area, either limited to technology transfers, or to support of startups, or to support to specific activities linked to enterprises. So you find a large variety of tools. In the Arab world, we did an evaluation for the monitoring of policies, and we found out that, for example, a country like Tunisia or a country like Morocco has in fact used or announced the use of any possible instrument to promote innovation. And I think that something similar is happening to Egypt. You are going to use any possible instrument that exists to support innovation. And these are enormous, great variety. We don't have a lot of time, so I don't want to go in the detail. But what happens, first evaluation that we did of these tools, is that they are of a relatively low efficiency. That is, most policies, sorry for Ahmed believes very much for his fund and innovation, in fact, are of a limited efficiency. It is not related to the inability of the persons who manage the funds or who manage the support schemes. It is linked to the fact that innovation policies are aimed to a certain type of clientele, to a certain type of clients, of targets. And these targets can be companies that have already had, the most companies that can understand these policies are companies that have already had an experience of technology, a technological learning. They have gone through the process of looking for themselves for a company. It is no wonder that IBM knows how to set up a technology center. It has gone through all the stages and also not only successes, it knows also what are the limits in developing a technology. Companies that have been through developing a new process and they know that they have a difficulty, they know how they cannot resolve the questions by themselves. So they will go to seek for funding for collaborative projects, for relations with companies, for relations with industries. Companies that have not had this previous experience are not so keen in going to the funding, in going to the support from the government to the technology transfer and technology development. I insist very much on that because the funding issue is not resolved. It's not resolving the question of technological development. It's not resolving it because the technological development issue is how the company links its technology, its markets, and its own organization. And it's not the funding that's going to make that. The funding is part of it, it's part of that for the company, but it's not because you have a good offer in terms of tools that you will go through this process. Why I'm insisting so much for that is we did a series of studies to find out how much, for example, the study on innovation survey done, was it last year in Egypt? Yes? No, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. That was done in Egypt, the one done in Morocco, the two done in Morocco. We did an evaluation of the 2 innovation surveys in Tunisia. We are ongoing now a survey in innovation survey in Lebanon. What we found out in all these contexts is that very few companies know about the funding tools. Very few companies, with the exception of ICTs, of course, where there is a closer connection between the companies and the government environment. Very few companies go to the tools. It's around 10% was the figure of companies who declare knowing what are the instruments to support innovation that are promoted by them. There has been a variety of tools. One of them has been the incubators. We've talked about the incubators, there's one here. One of the most successful incubators around the Mediterranean, one of them, is Veritech, which I know a little bit of, which has generated in 10 years 100 companies, of which one is a direct competitor of Microsoft on one of its products. It's been created by four mathematicians who do computation of high-velocity computation on imagery, and they have produced a small product. You can download it on your iPhones. It's called Dermanda, and it makes panoramic views in less than 5 seconds. The IBM has put 150 persons to work on that, and they have never been able to be as productive because the idea was good. The implementation of the tool has been very good. This company has been very profitable, and it has paid for many of the other companies that are less profitable in the incubator. Today, I think Veritech has around 40 companies on board, and it has been very successful in generating specific space for companies. I was astonished by the figures of 6 companies that were mentioned for the incubators here in Egypt, because they seem to be very low figures. And I think that there is a problem with the figures. We are not sufficient audacious. We should go for much more companies, because the number of success is related to the total number of proposals. And thus, there is an issue there on quantity of companies. This figure I take it from the Bureau of Innovation from the Egypt survey. I've been comparing these figures with the ones in Europe and in Latin America. And the innovation cost is being too high, market dominated by established enterprise, and lack of qualified personnel, which are among the things that are mentioned as very frequently by the companies, are in the same order as you find in other surveys, and is much higher in percentage than in other countries, of 10% more or less more. Which means that the issues of lack of funding for innovation projects, the difficulties in getting into the market locally in Egypt, and the lack of qualified personnel are really affecting a lot of companies here in Egypt. Some known facts about technology. I already mentioned the technology learning issue. The other thing that we need to remember all the time, which explains also the low efficiency of policies, is that technology is dependent upon its own history. We call this path dependency in economics, but it's the more technology comes because you have this history of technology and that you follow a track. Inside enterprises, this learning process is depending both on all the qualities and creating more personnel, qualified personnel. But I agree very much on what has been told before. A lot depends on the clients. And more of the innovative projects depend on clients. One of the interesting things in the case studies we did in China was that the small Chinese companies that were growing rapidly were using their foreign clients as their technology providers. They're not using them as just clients to market. They ask their client, okay, I give you the product you need for the costs you want, but you have to learn me how to do it. you have to give me the technology that you use to do it. And since I'm not your exclusive provider for this product, I'll give you the exclusivity for your market, for example, for faucets in Italy, but then I'll sell the same faucets in China under my own brand. It has been a quite successful procedure, as you know. And it's the same case in practically all the medium tech and low tech technologies. It has been the same thing that has been applied for computers. That's exactly how the company that bought the IBM section of computers has done with the same kind of process of asking to its clients how to develop the technology, for example, on testing, on quality, on durability and sustainability, on type of product, on materials, and then sell the same product on their local market while giving the exclusivity to the foreign market, to their clients. Another thing that has been very much emphasized in the recent years has been the technology transfer units. We've talked about that. There's 3 new technology transfer units that have been created in Egypt, I think, that have been funded by RTI. There has been something like 15 of them created in Morocco. I think only one works really. The others are administrative entities that know how to fill up a form but don't know how to help the technology go from inside the research or the university towards the company. Again, it's because we are in this scheme of waiting, supposing that there is a need, and you just need to create a tool so that the need is fulfilled. It's not like that it was. Exactly as for a product on the market, you need to push it to the market, and it's had something happen similar to the technology transfer units. The case of the technology transfer units is really a shame because there's a lot of effort that's been done in that, and a lot of money also that has been put in creating the technology transfer units. And they are, we know, everybody knows that they are an essential clue because they resolve issues that are very important, but nobody really knows how, why, in some cases they work and why not. There is a very famous case, since I am in Egypt, I'm mentioning it's TIEC of Hebrew University. Sorry, I'm mentioning an Israeli case. It makes $4 billion revenues, profits per year. It sells all the products that is created by the Hospital of Hebrew University. It's the most efficient technology transfer unit in the world. And one of the interesting aspects is that they have always been in the scheme of being themselves a company that does not use its profit for distributing as equity to the share to the people who own the company, but to refund projects that are of low probability of success, projects that are very early in their maturation. It's the scheme of putting a technology transfer, creating a technology transfer, not as a university structure or a research institute structure, but as a company itself, is probably one of the most efficient ways of promoting the technology outside the research area to the technology. That's more or less my message. I'm going to do some publicity. Sorry, sending me to the publicity page. I belong to an institute called TIEC, which is a French research public institute. We're not a funding agency. We have a funding agency inside the institute. We are a relatively small institute with only 890 researchers, approximately 3,000. We have only 239 million euros budget, which is a small research budget for France. Today we have a portfolio of 100 patents. This has been after we sold or disappeared 300 of them. We completely eliminated 300 patents. The patent has no sense if you don't exploit it. it's money you spend for nothing. So it's expensive. You need an army of legal counselors to make it, to create it, to make it alive, not to write it down, but just to file it and to defend it. So having a background has no sense if there's no activity behind, no economic activity behind. We have been generating in the last 2 years around 4 million euros from this technology transfer unit, which is a small number, and we have been giving scholarships to people who participate in one way or another in technology and research activities. One of the things that we believe very much in research activities, that I finish with that, is that there's a sort of virtuous circle for research. If you do, people who do good research are usually also people, not all of them, people who do good technology development projects are also good researchers when it is based on research. There is a sort of feeding the research by the problems of industry, by the questions that you resolve in industry. The companies that have been created by people who do organic biopesticides, for example, in Africa, that work in our institute with African partners, are also people who publish a lot. And they publish a lot collaboratively. They publish a lot in academic journals, and they are very good on their academic standing, and they are very good at making a company, creating a company. And this is important. It's not two activities that are one opposed to the other, as it is often presented. From one side you have research, on the other side you have development. It's two activities that can go in many cases hand in hand. Thank you.